Reflections. From Ideal to Image, Part 1. Excerpts from The Image, A Guide to Pseudo-Events in America by Daniel Joseph. You buy belief when you buy the bulletin. Tempted, like no generation before us, to believe we can fabricate our experience, our news, our celebrities, our adventures, and our art forms, we finally believe we can make the very yardstick by which all of these are to be measured. That we can make our very ideals. This is the climax of our extravagant expectations. It is expressed in a universal shift in our American way of speaking, from talk about ideals to talk about images. The Bible tells us that God created man in his own image. Until recently, skeptics titillated us by reversing the metaphor. If God made us in his own image, observed Voltaire, we have certainly returned the compliment. Dostoevsky said, more profoundly, that it was the devil that man had created in his own likeness. But the God of the American founding fathers, whatever other qualities he might have had, was a constitutional monarch. He ruled by laws which he was not free to change at his whim. He had not yet become a chairman of the board, ruling under a policy directive approved by and in the interest of these citizen stockholders. The laws of nature and of nature's God governed an orderly universe. For neither God nor man was the world wholly plastic. But more recently, just as adventure has become a name for the unexpectedness we plan for ourselves or pay others to plan for us, so we have emptied the word value. We have moved away from a traditional meaning found in older dictionaries, value, ethics, that which is worthy of esteem for its own sake, that which has intrinsic worth, toward a newer and modern American meaning, value, in sociology, acts, customs, institutions, etc., regarded in a particular, especially favorable way by a people, ethnic group, etc. Our new social scientists speak of values all the time. By it, they mean the peculiar standards which a society has made for itself. By it, they reassure us that we need not worry over the dissolution of ideals, since all ideals are obsolete. The most civilized peoples, in fact, are those who know they are guided by values of their own making. Yet for most of our history, we have believed ourselves a nation guided by ideals. Ideals given us by tradition, by reason, or by God. Ideals are like stars, observed Carl Schurz on April 18, 1859, the anniversary eve of Lexington and Concord. You will not succeed in touching them with your hands, but like the seafaring man on the desert of waters, you choose them as your guides, and following them will reach your destiny. In 19th century America, the most extreme modernism held that man was made by his environment. In the 20th century America, without abandoning belief that we are made by our environment, we also believe our environment can be made almost wholly by us. This is the appealing contradiction at the heart of our passion for pseudo-events. For made news, synthetic heroes, prefabricated tourist attractions, homogenized interchangeable forms of art and literature where there are no originals, but only the shadows we make of other shadows. We believe we can fill our experience with newfangled content. Almost everything we see and hear and do persuades us that this power is ours. The life in America which I have described is a spectator sport in which we ourselves make the props and are the sole performers. But to what end? How surprising if men, who make their environment and fill experience with whatever they please, could not also make their God? God himself becomes a pseudo-event, with all the familiar characteristics. He is not spontaneous or self-created. He has been planned or planted primarily for the desirable effects of having him reported and believed in. He is to be viewed like a television show, only at our convenience. His power can be measured by how widely he is reported, how often he is spoken about. His relation to underlying reality is ambiguous. As with other pseudo-events about God, too, the most interesting question for us is not what he does, but whether he exists. We worry over his prestige. By creating him, we intend him to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. He is the celebrity author of the world's bestseller. We have made God into the biggest celebrity of all, to contain our own emptiness. He is the greatest of the greatest. What preoccupies us, then, is not God as a fact of nature, but as a fabrication useful for a God-fearing society. God himself becomes not a power, but an image. Now, the language of images is everywhere. Everywhere it has displaced the language of ideals. If the right image will elect a president, or sell an automobile, a religion, a cigarette, or a suit of clothes, why can it not make America herself, or the American way of life, a saleable commodity all over the earth? In discussing ourselves, our communities, our corporations, our nation, our leaders, ourselves, we talk the language of images. In the minister's study and the professor's seminar room, as well as in advertising offices and on street corners. When the distinguished scientists and educators on the Science Advisory Committee reported to President Eisenhower on November 19, 1960, they criticized universities for making an artificial division between research and teaching. What was essential, they urged, was that the environment as a whole should be an environment of learning, investigation, and teaching all together. Only too often the universities fail to understand and support this image of their nature. This devious, circumlocutory way of talking has become common. We do not even notice it. In an earlier age, critics would have objected simply that universities fail to pursue this ideal or that ideal. But today universities, like other institutions, in fact like everybody, are judged by whether they fit into a well-tailored image of themselves. Some characteristics of the image can be suggested by our use of the corporate image.
The corporate image of a company is the overall impression that the public has of the business. This can be influenced by many factors, including marketing, customer service, and public relations. A strong corporate image is often essential for a company to be successful.
This is, of course, the most elaborately and expensively contrived of the images of our age. In a series of lectures on effective advertising at a meeting of the American Management Association, New York City, October 27, 1960, Mr. Mac Hannon, managing partner in Hannon & Son, discussed the problem of building a corporate image. He warned of the dangers of building a positive corporate image. This might do a firm more harm than good. By its very nature, he explained, no positive image can be all things to all of a corporation's publics. The sharper and more precise the image, the more likely it will accommodate only certain subsections of the corporate publics while isolating others. He mentioned a corporation that had the image of being totally efficient, but completely dehumanized. A dehumanized image discourages present employees, warns off prospective employees, and executive recruiters, and may even dissuade certain discerning groups of investors. He then offered an escape from these perils of positivism. What he urged was a neutral corporate image. This, he said, was not to be equated with a wishy-washy, vague, or unplanned image. It is, instead, open-ended. It allows the various corporate publics to be drawn into the corporate picture. A neutral corporate image is an invitation to management's public for a suspension of their critical judgment. Middle of the road as it is, the neutral image attracts all but the marginal fringe groups at either attitudinal extreme. But because it is impartial, it repels none. This interesting advice presupposes certain familiar characteristics in a corporate image. They are clues to all the image thinking of our time. What the pseudo-event is in the world of fact, the image is in the world of value. The image is a pseudo-ideal. As we will see in part 2 of this series, it is synthetic, believable, passive, vivid, simplified, and ambiguous.